Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spiritual Journey podcast. My name is Nimesh, Radia, and I'm your host. I always love starting every episode by saying thank you. I feel so blessed with this podcast, the impact it's having, the messages we receive on a weekly basis. People find it when they need it most, and I just really do feel like it's guided. So if you're a regular listener, welcome back. Thank you for your support. Thank you for allowing us to guide you. If you're relatively new, welcome. We love any feedback. If there's any topic you'd like us to cover, anything you want us to go deeper in, or any changes you want us to make, please let us know. If you're loving this podcast, please do share it. Please comment. Please like. It really does help get it to more people. I am an Akashic record reader, Akashic trainer, podcast host, podcast creator, as well as a spiritual coach and mentor. What I love to do is to guide people on their spiritual journey. I feel like we're all going through some kind of shift. And I get to guide people as you go through a shift, whether it's through a beautiful spiritual mentoring program that me and Stacey channeled, whether it's through Akashic record reading, whether it's through this podcast, public speaking, membership. There's so many ways that we give value that whatever's right for you is perfect. So if my voice resonates and you feel like we have a soul connection, then book a free discovery call. I can take you through the mentorship program that we do. It's over 12 weeks. I hold your space. I guide you to you. You do really have a lot of breakthroughs, and it should come with a health warning. And just actually, I have current promo where I'm including Akashic record training in there too. So it's a 14-week program. But the best thing to do is book a free discovery call, and I can take you through it. And so many other things. I'll include the links to our website. And this podcast wouldn't be where it is today without my stunning and incredible co-host and published author, Stacey Brown. Stacey, I got to do it. Over to you. I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Hi, friends. It's so good to be back. I really do love being a part of this podcast. And I know that there are so many people reaching out saying how much we've helped. It's an honor to be in this space with you again. So thanks for being here and thanks for tuning in. My name is Stacey. I'm an intuitive. I do readings for people from all around the world. I am also an Akashic record reader and a spiritual coach and mentor. And almost exactly 3 years ago, I published my first book, Journey to Soul Center, Discovering the Gift of Surrender. It's available on Amazon and Audible. I am really looking forward to getting into this episode today, Nims. How you doing?
I'm good. And I'm excited about today's episode too. So this podcast, I started as a passion project. I was guided to, I got the message through the Akashic Records and my voice, my gift. I named the podcast after my mentor, my friend who'd left this realm, aged only 38 in March 2020. Called it Spiritual Journey, has her initials, Sidra Jeffrey. But I feel like the kind of the podcast accelerated when Stacey became co-host, and that kind of coincided with your book release. So I'm excited. Today we're going to dive into your book. It's been, just as you said, just over 3 years since you released it, and we thought it's a perfect time to kind of, as it's the anniversary, to go back into the journey of writing that book, and then kind of the journey of 3 years on, right? Well, where has it brought you? The impact it had. I have to say to you, I wasn't planning to support somebody in the deep way I did of writing your book. It wasn't something I manifested, and we'll talk about what that looks like. But I'd love for you to go, kind of intro the topic in terms of, your book, and as we dive into the topic of how it's created and all that sort of stuff. What do you want to share about your book from 3 years ago and kind of the journey of writing it and a summary of where you are now?
So I think the first thing that I want to say in all of this is I'm hoping that this is encouragement for those who have a story to tell. I am hoping that hearing my journey of writing the book and the process that I went through will inspire some of our listeners on their own journey. I know so many people have talked about writing a book to me and have shared over the years, this is something they would really like to do. And I'm hoping that from this episode, you'll maybe get some inspiration on your own journey. So that's the biggest intention here. Um, I had always had it on my list of things to do that I wanted to write a book, but I never thought that it was possible. For those who don't know, I have ADD and am very easily distracted and have a hard time organizing my thoughts. And the idea of sitting down to write a book felt like a daunting task. I just didn't know how that was going to unfold. And I knew that I had a story to share. And I knew that some pivotal things had happened in my life that could inspire other people on their healing journey, but I really didn't know where to start with it. So 3 years ago, I was visiting you in the UK, and I thought that I was there to study your mentor, Sidra. Like, I thought that was the reason I was there. And I was there for a month. And in the first 3 weeks, we had a bunch of adventures. We were, working on our mentorship program that we channeled. There was a lot of stuff that we did. And in the back of my mind, I thought about the book, but I didn't really think about it seriously. And then one day I went out for the day and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I have to write a book. And I came back to your house that day and I was like, buddy, I got to write a book. And you were like, okay, that sounds great. And I was like, no, now. Like, now, we have to do this now. And there was this urgency that I had that I couldn't explain. It was like a power took over me and said, now is the time. And with just a week left with you, we started to embark upon the journey. Now, friends, if you're thinking about writing a book, I am sure that you are sitting there thinking of the daunting task of writing everything down in some way, whether it's paper to pen or it's typing on your computer. You're probably thinking, how am I going to get the story out? And that's exactly where I was. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get out all these details. I don't know how I'm going to remember everything. And we took a really unique approach to this process. And we started with a timeline and a big pad of paper and just writing down the series of events that had happened in my life and plugging them into a rough timeline as best we could. And I'm somebody that I'm a storyteller. I'm not a writer. Okay. And I really want to be clear on that, because I think when you write a book, people think, okay, you're a writer. But for me, that wasn't the case. I would say I'm more of a storyteller. And so we sat down and decided to audio record me telling the different stories in my life. And from that space, we took those recordings and had them transcribed and then worked with an editor, and the process started to unfold. I really believe with every fiber in my being that this was a God thing. I don't know when else in my life I would be given the gift of a pocket of time to be able to focus on a task like this and have the support from a friend sitting there with me. Friends, when you are reliving the past and you're trying to write a book, you have to take the reader on a journey, and you've got to give them the experience of being there with you. And so you're reliving the experiences that you've been through in all 5 of your senses. I mean, you have to bring that reader into the experience as if they were there with you. And doing that is very hard. If it's something challenging that you faced, it is very, very hard to go through that process. And yet I was given the gift of being able to do this process with you, Nims, and having your support there with me while I was telling these challenging stories. And I just don't know how I would get through it otherwise. I mean, it was such an emotional process and taught me so much about myself. I didn't want to just take the reader on a journey through my story. I have a lot of respect for authors who do that and just tell the story, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted there to be some kind of benefit to the reader, that it would be applicable to your life and get you thinking about what you have happening in your world. And so we came up with the idea of doing like a journal prompt style question for the reader and like a thought at the end of each chapter. And the idea is to pull you in and get you thinking about your own story and get you thinking a little bit deeper about what you've been through. So I think it's a really unique approach. And a lot of people have said to me they've gotten a lot from that. It's been really beautiful to get messages from people from all different parts of the world who are reading my book. You know, I remember thinking to myself, is anybody going to read this? You know, is anybody going to take anything from this? Is this going to be something that is going to help people in the way I envision it helping people? And even to this day, 3 years later, I'm still getting emails and messages from people from all around the world who are sharing that they've read my book and what they've gotten out of it. And it is really powerful, Nims. It's really powerful to think that our words can hold so much value.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's the reason why when we talked about recording this episode, I felt it was important is I feel like right now everybody's being pushed to shine their light. So this episode, sure, is about Stacey and the process of how the book came about, but it's more kind of a nudge on to our listeners to say you have a story that needs to be told, and whether you write a book or whether you have you shine your light, we just felt it was important to talk about it. And you know, the journey to writing Stacey's book. Honestly, when she came back that day, in would have been January 21, because it took a year, the whole process, and you know, like I said, when she came back, she did seem a little possessed, and I had no idea what was involved in releasing a book, you know, kind of publishing it through AWS, and I just, you know, we came up with the idea of recording it, getting transcribed. You know, I sat there opposite while, you know, when Stacey's telling her story, as she said, she's a really good storyteller, but the way that she channels the message is she goes back to everything she went through. So I sat there as she went through her deepest, darkest moments. And I could, you know, being an empath, you could feel her energy. And yeah, it was definitely an intense experience. And then, you know, it's not just a one-time thing, right? You've got to record it one time, then you've got to record it again, you know, to kind of, you know, add extra bits. Then she recorded the audible version herself, so she recorded it again third time. And it's just, it took a whole year to publish and many steps working through an editor and all the rest of it. And it was, I definitely feel like it was guided. There was so much to it. There was the recording and all that, how that happened. But even, you know, she was struggling with the title, and we were taking a day trip, or not even a half day trip in just around London. When we went to a place called Waltham Abbey, and she was kind of not sure with the name and stuff. And we were walking through this gateway, and I just said, well, why don't you ask, as you step through the gateway, ask, you know, what should you call the book? And she did it. She just thought, okay, you know, most people look at me and think I'm crazy, but she just trusted. And that's where that's where the name came through. And it was like a level of certainty. And, you know, kind of, if you buy the book and you see the cover, I was also there, you know, that was taken in Florida, right? And, you know, that was a crazy day too. It's like there's so many steps that were involved to create the finished article. But again, when guiding Stacey through it, as she said, we never wanted it to be about her sharing her story. It was more about the power of her story and how it guided her to become the healer. And I would highly recommend it. I'd actually highly recommend the Audible version of it because, like I said, she's a really good storyteller. But I don't know what my expectations were when we released it, Stacey. It was, I remember the moments. It's like you almost kind of, the moments of when you release the final manuscript to the editor and all these kind of things. And it's almost like I feel like we were working towards getting the book out. And it's like when it was released, like, oh, okay, now what? It's like, it was kind of like a surreal experience. Like I said, I had no plans to help anybody release their book. It's definitely a full-on process, and there is a lot more steps to it. And if anybody's interested, we can definitely kind of share more and take you through it. But it's really didn't want this episode just to be about the book. It's more, for me, it was more about kind of the journey of sharing your truth and sharing your story, and how powerful it is, and how we all have a story. So, Stacey, let me ask you, when the book was released, and it was kind of, I know there was a part of my language, but there was definitely an oh shit moment when you realize, we held on. My story, my deepest, darkest pain is going to be shared with the world. And, the way you managed it up until then was that, you focused on the one person who's going to help. If you focused on the many that would read it, I think it might have consumed you. But how did it feel after all that process, when we're so focused on getting the book out, when it was released? How did that feel?
Scary as hell. I mean, it was something that I became consumed with in the process of telling the story as accurately as I could, and trying to, come from the perspective of authenticity and just sharing my heart. And as I was doing it, I sat in your kitchen recording, and it was just you and me. And one of the things that I really treasure about this friendship is the love and the acceptance that I have gotten from you. Like, I just felt held the whole time I was recording. I felt like, I was sitting there with one of my best friends, just talking, just sharing the story. And even in the process of seeing it in black and white and having an editor read through it, didn't really the reality of it didn't really set in at that point. It was like, okay, this is a small project, and a couple of people are reading my story. And then I remember when it was like, we pushed the button and officially published, and it was a huge oh shit moment, because, friends, I don't paint myself in a good light in this book. I talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. I talk about my brokenness very openly. I talk about the decisions I've made in my life and the journey that I've been on. And
you're vulnerable, like you're on this podcast, right? You share. There's only one way you can be, and you share every facet of you at a really deep level. And I feel, I've always said that's your super gift. When I first heard you on an app called Clubhouse, I only came on stage to speak to you because of that power of your vulnerability, and that comes through in your story. It's just, this is what I'm saying. I don't feel that you made it about your story. I feel like you made it about your strength. as you came through the most difficult times in your world. So I know people have probably heard it before, but I'd love for you just to talk a little bit about what is the book about. I feel like we've just jumped into getting the book released, but why don't we talk a little bit about? And again, if you heard it before, it's a powerful. What I call it, a powerful story. It's a powerful journey that has really guided Stacey to be the healer that she is today. So, Stacey, I'd love for you to share a bit about it.
So it kind of starts off with my story as far as how I was raised. I was raised in like a devoutly religious home. I was raised Mormon, and I talk about the impact of that upbringing and how it affected me and the kind of complex dynamic, specifically with my father, and what that was like. And then I go into talking about my decisions in adulthood, marriages and divorce, some of the challenges that I've faced. And ultimately, I share the journey with my son in a powerful, powerful series of events. My son, 17 at the time, attempted to take his own life. And I talk about the impact that that had on me as a mother and on our family, and the lessons that I learned from that process. Because from my son's most significant pain came the gift of me understanding my healing abilities and the things that I was holding back on that I knew that I could help people with. And so it's an evolution. I take you on a journey of understanding where I came from and how that impacted me. And then ultimately going through the most challenging season of motherhood that I'll ever face, I'm sure. So it's a journey for the reader. And I really tried to be as open with the story as possible and really take you inside my world and what I was going through and how I was experiencing it and how all of these things impacted me. And, it's interesting. My son is thriving now. He's, for those who, I've had people ask me for an update, he is absolutely doing what God called him to do. He is helping people get sober, and he has been sober now for years and has really done a lot of work on himself to be the best version that he can be. And not long ago, he had my book sitting at his house, and he was waiting for a friend to come pick him up, and the book was sitting there, and he picked it up. And long story short, the friend never showed up to pick him up, and my son ended up reading the book cover to cover. And that really touched me because, my kids had to live through this experience, and I was concerned about how they would receive it. Like, would they ever be able to read it? Would they ever be able to live through the experience? What would the impact be on them? And to have my son read it was so powerful because I didn't pressure him to do it. He just did it. And what a beautiful thing to be able to share that with him and to have him experience seeing his story from his mother's perspective.
Wow. That'd be, Stacey doesn't, I don't know if she fully gives it justice in terms of the book. I mean, it starts with, when her son went through what he went through, but, he drives an estimated 100 miles per hour into a tree. And, they didn't give him much hope to survive. And, but it's like I was saying earlier, that this book is, and actually all of our stories, if you go to your most painful experience and you ask yourself, how did that help you grow? I really feel that our most painful experiences are our biggest growth factor. Like grief for me, losing both my parents and, my mentor, my friend passing away in March 2020. that was a massive activator for me, the healer in me. And Stacey shares stories in her book about how the magical moments of the healer in her being activated, and kind of the craziest stories of just knowing how supported she is. And that's the magic of your story, right, Stacey? But also anyone that's listening, it's not what happened to you, it's how you responded and how you grew and how you became the healer that you are today. And that for me is where the power is because look, on this, we're a soul having a human experience, and that's why I always say pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. So I feel like it's never about the pain, it's actually what did you do with it, how did you grow. And I feel like right now we're being pushed to shine our light and use all our gifts in a different sort of way. And I'm going to put you on the spot here, Stacey, but I'd love for you to share one of the stories, one of the experiences from the book. I can pick one for you if you wish. There's a couple that come to mind. But yeah, how does that feel?
You got to tell me which one.
I forget what the chapter's called, but he was in my room. It was that one.
Yeah, that's a powerful one. So when my son was in the hospital, we had no idea what the outcome was going to be at this point. And we had come home from the hospital just exhausted. And I remember like hearing my husband falling asleep next to me. Like I remember like listening to his breathing regulate, and I don't remember falling asleep. I just want to be clear on that. I felt like I was wide awake. And my son is, laying in a coma in the hospital. And I just was laying there trying to bring myself to a space of trying to get some sleep. And as I was laying there, I had a vision that was very real, where my son came walking into our room. I can tell you, I knew exactly what he was wearing. He was in skinny jeans and a hoodie, and he had a hat on. And he sat on the edge of the bed and he flipped his hat around backwards. And he said, "Mom, I don't know what to do because I've seen this." And he pointed to the corner of my room. And there was my grandfather and my husband's grandfather and a really bright figure in between them that I believe was God. And he's, my son says, "Because I've seen this." And then he looked at me as if asking me what to do. Like, what do I do? And to me, it was like he was asking me for permission or an answer as to what he was supposed to do with his life. In that moment, I didn't know what to say or do. And I just said, "It's not up to me." And then he was gone. And I don't know when I fell asleep, but I woke up the next morning and I started to recount to my husband what had happened. And he collapsed and he was like, "Oh my God, Dylan's going to die. Like he's asking permission to die. Like we have to go to the hospital right now." And we like frantically got ready to go to the hospital, and we drove into the city and we parked the car, and I heard my son's voice tell me to send my husband into the room and that he would validate me and the vision. It was just clear as day. It was like, send dad in, Mom, and I will tell him. And I was like, I'm losing my mind. Like, I'm totally losing my mind. I'm hearing my comatose son in my head telling me this. What do I do with it? And so we walked into the hospital and I just blurted out to my husband, like, you have to go in there and ask him if he was in our room. Now, when you're in a medically induced coma, and this is something I didn't know till I was in the situation, they put you in a medically induced coma to rest the brain so that it can heal. But what they do is they ease the medication from having you in the comatose state. They'll ease the medication and wake you up occasionally just to get your brain stimulated again. And so I waited in the waiting room, and my husband went into our son's room, and he was gone for, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes. And he came back out into the waiting room with tears streaming down his face. And he said, Dylan confirmed it in 2 ways that he was in our room last night. And I was like, I told you, like, I knew he was in our room. So we went home that night again, and we were settling for bed in the same routine, trying to like ease our minds, get a little bit of sleep in between the hospital stays. And the phone rings, and it's the hospital. And the nurse says immediately, I don't want you to worry. There's nothing wrong. But Dylan just woke up, and he keeps repeating the same phrase over and over again. I was upstairs. I was upstairs. I was upstairs. It was such a powerful exchange to have an experience that we were going through be validated in such a powerful way, and to see that I had this spiritual encounter in a space where things could feel so dark. It was inspiring, and it was one of those experiences I will never forget, and brought me so much peace in a time of so much turmoil.
I mean, that story still gives me goosebumps. And there's so many examples, there's so many stories like that Stacey shares in the book, and it, to me, it's a beautiful example that universe, your guide, source, whatever you want to call it, aren't going to stop you having painful experiences, because that's what your soul's here to experience, right? But there is magic. There is still support for you going through those periods, and having listened to Stacey, recount her story, and I wouldn't want to wish that level of pain on anybody, right? But you wouldn't be the healer today that you are today, Stacey, if you hadn't been through everything you've been through. And tell us a bit more about what's happened since. What have you created? What's I remember when the book was released, and it's like, okay, and it's like, and I remember talking to you. It's like, okay, now what? You've created a lot since, and you've been through a lot since. But I'd love for you to talk. What's your journey been like after the book, and what has it led you to? How did it feel? Yeah, anything you want to share that's in your heart.
It's been such a powerful journey since the book. I mean, it's been 3 years, and I have continued to live and experience things that I never would have anticipated. I've traveled a bunch. I've been engaged, and that engagement broke off. I have worked tirelessly with people from all around the world doing readings and mentorship, and trying to pour into people in the best way that I know how. I feel that because of the experiences I've been through and sharing them, it's opened up a lot of opportunities for conversation with people that I never would have expected. I've heard from people from all around the world who have read my book and have been touched in some sort of way, which has been powerful. And I feel like I've just continued to grow as a healer. You know, I've just continued to heal myself, right? And work on myself, and also be in a space where I can help others. And I think that from the situation with my son, it ignited a passion in me to want to help people in a bigger way. And so I've just been fiercely dedicated to that. And recently I made the decision to head back into a salon part-time. And so I'm working with people both virtually and in person now. And it's been powerful, Nims. It's been powerful to see how it's changed me and to see the impact that it's had on other people who have read the book. I think that's the thing that blows my mind the most, even now, is getting the messages from people who have read the book and have felt touched by it, have been inspired by it, have had some sort of takeaway or inspiration from it. That for me has been really powerful.
Yes, it is interesting, right? And it's that, I mean, we've talked about it often. It's like, for me, I kind of, like I said, I had no plans of supporting anybody to write a book. That wasn't in my list, but it was such a profound experience. And, you know, I'll never forget being there to support you to, like I said, everywhere, everything from recording the book multiple times to taking the picture for the cover, you know, kind of being there with you and Jesse to do that. And then, you know, even working with the editor, all the finding the name, and it just felt so divinely guided. And it kind of taught me that, you know, my deal with my guides is I'm just going to keep showing up. I'm going to show up in whatever form I feel like I'm guided to. And I feel like I was guided to kind of guide you and help you and support you to release that book, whatever it means, right? And whatever impact it has. And, you know, it's kind of like, because there was a part of me that, you know, to tell you a bit of story about me, it's like Sidra always used to call me her trump card. And, you know, when we were doing things together and stuff, some of the times I'd be in the background. I wouldn't necessarily be on stage with her and all this sort of stuff. And you know, and she always said, you know what, Nims, you're my trump card. Don't worry about it. And I never knew or understood what that meant. Because I was like, you know, Sidra, I'm here. I can do so much more. And then when she passed away, I realized what she meant by the trump card. Because it meant that I needed to come forward and step up for me. She was preparing me. She was training me to be her trump card to carry on the mission and whatever she started. And then when I was supporting you for the book, I was like, all right, this is me being the trump card again. And I do feel like there's sometimes I need to be at the forefront, and then sometimes I'm in the background being somebody's cheerleader. And that also taught me, you know, all the people I'm mentoring, and I see them shining their light and whatever that. And I was reflecting on it just yesterday, because I got a few messages from clients, just happened to be all on the same day, about impact they've had and things that they've done, releasing books and all that sort of stuff. And it just made me stop and realize that the impact we can have by shining our light individually, but also guiding others to do the same. And so, yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Like I said, when you came here for a month, that whole story of you coming here for a month and kind of, you know, we were meant to do lots of work together.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and it's just like, even that. I mean, so I'll give you a quick summary, because obviously this podcast could last for hours if we go through everything. But, you know, I met Stacey on an app called Clubhouse, and Clubhouse came around. It was when kind of was a lifesaver during COVID, when we can, you know, couldn't really get out, so needed space to be able to speak and speak our truth. And Clubhouse was a great place to do that. And I met Stacey on there, and she was being vulnerable, so we started a connection. Then every time she'd have a room, I'd go in there, and I have a beautiful. I mean, because if you regular listen to the podcast, you've heard me, but I have this habit of from somewhere channeling some deep questions. And for a series of times, I went into her room, I'd ask her a question, and it'd be a deep question, and she'd end up crying as she shared it. And I kind of know that's my role as an expander. So then I kind of asked them, like, Stacey, you sure you want me to keep asking these questions? And she said, yeah. So I went in once, and I said to her, okay, I don't know where it came from, but what are you manifesting, Stacey? And she just from nowhere said, I'm manifesting a trip to London. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And I knew her well enough by then to say if she's going to do something, she'll do it. But I kind of thought, it'd be 12 months time, whatever, we'll work out a time, no, whatever. And Stacey being Stacey, like, I think a week or two later, she messaged me and she's like, are you free these dates? And the dates, I think, were 4 weeks later. So literally within 6 to 7 weeks having that conversation, she was visiting London. She was here. She, visited some other friends. She stayed here I call this place Merlin, but she stayed here for a few days, but she was out and about. And again, that's another whole story. But she then, the last night she was here, she sat and looked through some of Sidra's stuff, some of Sidra's books, sketches and whatever, and she felt a real connection. So she took the flight back, and then she landed, and somehow she got the message that she needs to come back in a month's time for a month. So the first thing she did, she got picked up by a friend. She sat in the car without saying much to her friend. She just rang me. She says, I don't know why, but I'm coming back to see you in January. I'm kind of staying for a month. And I was like, okay. And I was like, are you asking me or are you telling me? I wasn't quite sure. But, and yeah, that month led to, like I said, this book being released. It led to the mentorship program that we do. And yeah, it kind of started a partnership in this for this pod that's kind of developed this podcast, and it's created so much more. But I guess who knows? All of that is, I guess, to say is trust your nudges, trust your soul when you meet somebody. They're meant to expand you somewhere. They're meant to teach you something. You don't know where it's going to lead. And I feel like right now we've been pushed to let go of those souls that are no longer serving us to create space for new people to come in. And who knows what these people are going to lead to and what you're going to create with them. So, but so Stacey, 3 years on, your book is very much about surrendering. So how much do you feel you've surrendered? What have you let go of? How are you trusting in your journey? You talked a bit about, kind of some of the things you've been through over the last 3 years. I feel like, we're all going through so many shifts, but your shifts have been quite profound, and kind of it's easy to kind of see them. So what does it feel like to you to continue to surrender?
Oh, it's like,
well, I said I asked these questions, so
yeah.
And by the way, none of these are scripted. I'm sure everyone knows that.
No, I mean, it's been a powerful process for me to surrender because my life looks nothing like it did at all, 3 years ago, 6 years ago. I mean, my life has changed so drastically, and I've had to surrender into it in order to work through the challenges that I've faced, in order to be the best version of myself, in order to help people in the way I want to help people. I really have had to have a mentality of complete surrender and recognizing that I'm not in control, that I'm on a journey of self-discovery and of healing. And I have to be open to whatever that path is for me. And right now, I'm not sure. I am just kind of trusting and believing that I'm going to be led exactly where I'm meant to be. I love helping people. I really have a passion for helping people. And so whatever is going to get me to those people and help them, that's what I want to do. And I would be lying if I didn't say I'm scared. I've talked about my fears on here before. Am I doing the right thing? Am I sharing too much? You know, um, just like trying to be as open to this process as I can be. And my hope is that I will inspire specifically my children to be true to themselves, right? And to live a life that they can be proud of. And I want to show them a mother who is willing to do the hard work in order to be the best version of me. And so I dedicated the book to my kids, and they are my greatest teachers. And my hope is that I can make them proud. It's been quite a journey, Nims. I mean, I really thought that I would write the book and get the stories out and life would kind of calm in a way. And I would not say that that's what's happened. I would say I'm absolutely still on the journey, and there's been so much that's happened that there could be another book.
Anyway, that's a whole different story. Let's not get into that. But it's interesting. Yeah, I kind of agree in terms of, writing the book for you. You kind of felt like that was almost like a destination, where really what it was probably an acceleration rather than a destination. And this is a journey that we've been on. Like, just yours manifested into a book, and so many shifts over a period of time. I'm sure anyone listening, if they look through the past few years, it's been lots and lots of changes. And I thought about when you wrote your book, I'm like, well, am I supposed to write a book? And so many people have asked me, am I not going to write a book? And I've never really. I know I channel a lot of information. I know I share a lot of channeled information. I'm sure I've got a number of books in me if I choose to release them. But I almost feel like this podcast is my way of sharing my story, sharing my truth, channeling information. But it is interesting, right? When you step back and you look and you think, so this is, I guess, the message to all listeners is, how are you sharing your truth? What are you doing to shine your light? What are you doing to, and not making it about your story, but what has led you to be this version of you? Listen to Stacey through this podcast. I'm like, do I share enough about my story? I feel like I'm an open book, but there's a lot about my story which has led me to who I am today, to find my voice. I've never really thought that my story was that important, but maybe it is, right? I don't feel like I hold back, but maybe there's more to share. So, Stacey, you've inspired something in me. Who knows? But there is one question you knew I was going to ask you, and actually, it's a good question to ask myself too. Actually, but my question to you is, what would you say to yourself if you were sitting back in the kitchen from 3 years ago? If you could talk to that version of you, what would you say to her?
I would say, this is going to be one of the hardest things that you will do, but it will absolutely be worth it. I really feel that writing this book to me was as daunting as running a marathon. I mean, it challenged me mentally, emotionally, physically. It challenged me in all the ways, but it ended up being such a powerful journey and something that I can truly be proud of. I mean, every time I hold my book, I am so grateful that I was able to go through the process and get it out there. And it's incredible to think of all the steps that happened to lead me to that place. I know without a doubt, I never could have written that book here, meaning in the States, in my life, with the people around me. Like it just never would have worked. And the universe, God knew that and gave me the gift of being in your space, in your home, feeling safe and secure to go to the dark places. And I'm just so grateful because I couldn't have done it without you, Nims. I mean, I know we've talked about it and I know I've expressed my gratitude, but there is no way that I could have done this process without support. And you sat there with me through me telling the stories repeatedly. You held me while I cried. You cried with me at times. You know, it was just one of those experiences that I'm so grateful we got to go through together because it definitely strengthened our bond. I mean, it definitely bonded us in a way. I mean, up until the book coming out, there were very few people who knew all about me and all my stories. And you sat there and got to know those things pretty quickly. Right. And to me, it was just such a beautiful experience to get to share it with somebody supporting me. And I don't know how else I would have done it. I really don't.
Yeah, and then for me, like I said earlier, it was definitely a blessing, to be there, to be part of that process. Not something I would have planned, but it definitely changed me. 3 years since, my world's totally changed. What I was doing on a day-to-day basis, I was in a corporate role. I was doing, I was traveling to the US all the time and all that sort of stuff, and my world has totally changed. So that something shifted in me with recording that book and starting the mentorship program and really kind of accelerating this podcast. And the last 3 years have massively changed my world. I'm unrecognizable in terms of what I do on a day-to-day basis. My voice memo being my gift and how I show up. I don't know how different that is. I have no idea. Maybe that's a question for others to ask. But thank you for allowing me to be part of that process, Stacey. I feel very, very privileged to be there. It was much more than I thought I was signing up for, to be honest. But and if you ever are going to write a second book, not sure. But anyway, that's a conversation we can have offline. But yeah, thank you for allowing me to hold space in that sort of way. It was a very unique experience. And we'll include the book link in the show notes and all that sort of stuff. And actually, we never talked about sending any signed books and all that, so I'll leave that up to you as we close out this episode. But have you got any kind of journal prompts, anything you want to share as we close out this episode?
I want our listeners to do a little bit of soul searching and ask yourself what it would look like to share a little bit more of who you are with the world. Whether you do that through spoken word or written word, I just believe that there's so much power in sharing our stories and that we are not meant to keep them to ourselves. I believe that so much of what we're going through is a learning experience. And when we share that with other people, we can inspire them on their own journey of healing. So I would just encourage our listeners to do a little bit of writing. Get real with yourself. Do you have a story that's meant to be shared? And if you do, where can you share it? Are you meant to write a book? Are you meant to do some public speaking? Are you meant to do a podcast? Do some soul searching and see what comes up. I had no idea that I would embark on this journey, but it has taught me so much about myself. And I'm so grateful that it's part of my legacy now.
I love it. So, yeah, I'd love any feedback on this episode. What did it inspire you? What inspired action? Sidra created a word called inspiration. So what inspired action are you going to do for you? What are you going to share? let us know. Send us a DM. I'll include our socials in the show notes. Just to announce, we have the next full moon webinar on the full moon itself on March the 2nd. It's free for 90 minutes. You get to experience me and Stacey in a different sort of way. It's on Zoom rather than, so I'd encourage you to join that. It's very healing. It's very loving. It's a safe community. But there's so much more that we do. So I'll include the links in the show notes. But yeah, this episode was really about using the story and the journey of what, Stacey's book and all that, what it's meant for her. But also, I'm hoping it's inspired you to really take a step back and how much have you grown in the last 3 years? What have you experienced? What's your painful experience taught you? And sending you all so much love and light. Thank you for being here. Stace, again, so proud of you for always being so vulnerable, for always showing up. And I know you're not 100% today, but again, you still showed up vulnerably. So thank you. Sending love and light out to everybody. Really kind of embrace this journey in this space. Thank you. And bye for now.